I'm Isaac,
I'm Brandon,
and this is BrainShake.
and today we have Chris Henningsen.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to our podcast, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, just what you're interested in, maybe some of the things you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. So I've always had a wide variety of interests. I wanted to be an inventor when I was a kid, and recently I've been working with technology, particularly in machine learning. And when you do something like that, you run into a lot of different things that could use a new perspective to analyze, like politics or economics, for example.
Right.
So I've been kind of looking at different things in different spaces and just trying to make some connections, see how new perspectives can be brought to things. So have an opportunity to talk about some of those. That's really cool.
So just kind of recognizing the patterns and similarities between different fields.
Yeah, and connections. You know, a lot of innovation in any field comes from someone who's not classically trained in that field.
Right.
Because
makes sense. Because then you're not kind of constrained by that funnel that you've been put through.
Yeah. Like it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot. Is that someone who's really intelligent can actually justify a more obviously wrong belief.
Right.
It's really
interesting. That's very true. So yeah, that's a good intro. I just realized we don't have water. It'd be nice just to have a glass of water.
Yeah, I can go and get that.
Well, we got the intro.
Yeah, so Brandon went and got some water for us.
Good man.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I haven't met you before this podcast or anything like that. So where are you from? Like, how did you get involved with Halifax and all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm from rural Nova Scotia originally.
Cool.
I grew up in Hants County.
Awesome.
I'll just give you the quick bio, kind of, and
yeah.
maybe you'll use that as the intro instead.
Maybe, yeah.
But so I grew up in Hants County. Didn't know what I wanted to do after school, and rather than pay a bunch of money to a university while figuring that out, I took a gap year, which turned into 4 gap years.
Okay.
During which time I did Katimavik, which was this youth program
That's awesome.
was active at the time. I still believe, actually, that Justin Trudeau would not have gone into politics if Katimavik had not been cancelled.
Oh, wow.
So in some ways we...
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting thought, yeah.
He was, I know he was very heavily involved with that for quite a while, and he started getting involved in the Liberal Party right after it was defunded.
Oh, wow.
So...
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Chain reactions, right? You could help a lot of people, you know.
Well, thank you. I feel there's definitely been some interesting connections made. I mean, I've met Brandon, through which I got introduced to this this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's cool stuff. That's some really cool stuff. Being able to get people with like-minded, interests together.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So I don't want to be redundant. So you talked about the creative meetup and everything?
Yeah, a little bit.
Cool. So what made you want to start that?
It's a bit of a long story. So when I was at the annual general meeting for Engineers Nova Scotia, there was an incubator, which Dalhousie had run, and it paired a business, a design, and an engineering student into single teams and had them build a product and a marketing strategy for that product within a fairly compressed time frame.
Okay.
And so someone was holding a presentation at the AGM. This was one of the talks of furthering innovation in Nova Scotia. And all the professionals were going, we'd really like something like that. So we tried to do a kind of incubator or sandbox innovation space. It was very poorly defined.
Okay.
And everyone kind of had different ideas of what they wanted from it, so it didn't really get very far. But what I really wanted from it was just the chance to network with other people that cared about creating new things.
Right.
Which which is also the easiest thing to do. You know, if you want to have a business framework that, you know, does the legal work for someone who just wants to invent a product, that's a lot of work to do behind the scenes. But setting up a meetup group and advertising it to people who care about creativity, and the medium to me isn't really important, because I think one of the great benefits of that is that you have, like I was saying in the intro, you have different perspectives.
Right.
And if I talk about something that's kind of confusing me, you guys will have very different perspectives than someone who's, you know, had the same kind of background as I have.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I love the whole concept of that, and I think it's something that I mean, you know, I've lived in the HRM my whole life. I always felt there was kind of a lacking of a creative network.
It's almost like there was like a divide, you know, of like just jobs and also like interests. You know, it's just people that are
and there's lots of different little hobby groups and stuff, but and I don't know. I mean, Meetup has lots of interesting groups, and I think that it's a really cool concept just in general to be able to go on, find your interest, and then meet up with people in real life that you didn't have to meet beforehand to get invited to this club. You know? And I think that's an exciting thing that the internet enables us to do.
Yeah.
So a natural transition from that would be, why does anything exist at all?
Yeah, well, it begs the question, doesn't it?
Of course.
That's one of those mysteries. You know, I've thought about it quite a lot, but I haven't come up with a satisfying theory.
I have my own.
Really? What's that?
So, I mean, it's actually really simple, maybe almost too simple, but my theory for why everything exists at all instead of nothing is because I don't believe nothing exists. I mean, I don't think you can point to something and say, this is what nothing is. Because as soon as you point to it, there's a thing there, whether it's quarks or it's photons or it's antimatter or undefined matter of dark sorts.
So you always think that there was always something that existed.
There was always something
kind of
everywhere in some form.
Maybe.
I don't know what the form is ever changing.
That's cool.
But I think the point would be that things were always here, and thus to ask the question, why does it exist at all? Because there's no other possibility. There's no possibility where it can't exist.
Exactly, yeah. That's cool.
It makes me think of this Buddhist idea of, well, I guess Western mysticism had this idea of quintessence also.
Okay.
Quintessence, you know, there were 4 elements.
Right.
And then quintessence is the 5th element, which is the basis of everything. And in Buddhist thought, that's examined quite a bit more closely. And you're supposed to also meditate on emptiness, which is kind of this very strange concept because it's also everything, or it's where everything takes place,
right,
so to speak. It's always bigger than the thing you are imagining, which is it's very interesting because like what you were saying, that nothing doesn't exist. From a Buddhist perspective, it's like nothing is a different kind of existence.
Okay.
Because this, the world we see is this kind of very temporary, but very active sort of existence, whereas nothing is this kind of eternal and unchanging existence that allows this all to happen.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But what would that nothing look like? Like, is it something beyond comprehension? Is that kind of like...
I would say certainly beyond explanation.
Beyond explanation.
I mean, most of like Zen Buddhism, for example, is the search for the experience of that.
Right.
Because it's seen as kind of the same as the nature of the mind. Right. Like if you meditate on the nature of consciousness, for example, consciousness isn't the contents of consciousness.
Right.
It's where the contents of consciousness take place. And if you try to look for it, you're going to get very confused. And if you keep at it, maybe have some kind of an insight into the nature of reality, which is, you know, what the monks are doing sitting at the tops of mountains.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of meditating myself, especially in the past year or so. I've been going to the Shambhalin Center on Tower Road. And I find like meditation is one of the most mysterious things to me because it changes your state of awareness, your state of consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's actually been found that it actually increases the brain's gray matter. I don't remember the exact conditions of the study, but there was a study that showed that, as well as other things that certain monks can achieve, whether it's temperature manipulation in their body and that sort of thing.
Brandon has taught me a lot of things about meditation and kind of, helped me get into it a little bit more, to the point where like I taught a lot of like peers in the course that I was taking, like good ways to meditate and control your breathing, and it's more so a type of meditation instead of like trying to get away from the thought. You're kind of studying it more so than anything.
You're just observing it, and letting it pass, and not judging it.
It's cool, but I guess just to give some people some context, the reason why we haven't posted for like 2 weeks is because I have been taking a course. I was academically dismissed from Dell, and so I had to take this Refine Your Learning Skills course, which was very helpful, to say the least. I learned a lot of like really new skills of being able to be assertive for support that I needed, and learning new skills like note taking and stuff. And I met a lot of really cool people. It was tough. Brandon stayed on the phone with me for a lot of it, and he helped motivate me get through getting through it. So, I guess that's the best possible.
That's why we've been absent.
Yeah.
Isaac has been hustling at the academics.
Yeah, it's been tough
to pursue a dream.
I got through it.
And therapeutic recreation.
Yeah.
I think I had like a sort of question I was going to pose about meditation. I can't remember exactly what I was going to say, but have you meditated somewhat?
Yeah.
Is there any experiences that stand out to you from your meditation experience, whether it be something that's emotional or physical or visual or anything like that?
When I was about 16, I went to this Tibetan Buddhist retreat in Virginia, and one of the meditations that we were doing there was on the nature of reality, so to speak, and
I want to go to this retreat already.
And just kind of looking at the contents of awareness and recognizing that those were kind of temporary, and that particularly that our reactions to them are just the product of our own mind, and trying to find some underlying reality, looking for some underlying reality beneath that or behind that.
Right.
And this was like 8 hours of meditation every day for about a month, so it got pretty intense.
Yeah.
And at one point I was doing some, extra because I hadn't finished in 8 hours. And I was kind of just discarding all the aspects of my own personality that didn't feel like they were my actual self, but were just something that I had created.
Right. Okay.
And just kind of going through that until I really had a very strong identity crisis, and this kind of, I wouldn't call it nihilistic, but this kind of very angsty questioning of whether anything was real at all, really wanting to know what is real. And then I kind of had a realization of what was real. I can't really verbalize it. I mean, what I kind of came back with was the universe exists and it is good. But that obviously, it doesn't encapsulate what I experienced. It's just kind of...
It's kind of a takeaway from this profound experience.
It's my first memory after the experience.
It's hard to bottle
something
so deep into the English language in a way that would really give it justice, I think, sometimes.
I always love, like, seeing how some people, or many different people, meditate and go through life in that way. It's really cool. and talking about like, you know, identity crisis, that's something that I feel like a lot of us kind of go through, and asking what is real, like you were saying in life, it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have some experience with that, maybe with your dreaming and that kind of thing.
No, I have a lot of, you know, I don't know if I've explained it in the podcast before, but I deal with a lot of sleep paralysis attacks, and I'm not sure. Basically, to give an explanation, what it is, you know, when you go into a dream state, you know, your body's paralyzed because you know you don't want to act out what your dreams are, right? But what this is your brain is awake, but your body is still asleep. So you have almost like this mirrored or this layered version of your room or wherever you're sleeping. And things can happen. For example, you hear voices. You can have like a shadow that'll try and taunt you or attack you in some dreams. And if you're very creative minded or have a very creative imagination, it can be very terrifying. It's usually nightmarish things, but I've had dreams, you know, aside from sleep paralysis, where I've woken up from a coma. You know, I've had a lot of surgeries, and I've woken up from a coma in a bed, and my whole family and people that I didn't even know or have met in my entire life were there and telling me the whole situation, that I've been, you know, in a coma for 4 years, and
like this was in the dream.
Yeah, and so you know, we started talking, but then I started fading out from the dream as if I was going back to sleep, and they were like, we have to wake him up and all that, and freaking out. And I woke up one day and was just like, what is going on?
Right. We talked about this in the first podcast, that it made you kind of question reality in general, because of that whole experience.
It was scary, but dreams for me, lucid dreaming and stuff like that, it's something that I've kind of come to master, per se, you know, being able to realize when it is a dream and being able to shape things or my choices.
Yeah, I tried messing with lucid dreaming. It kind of freaks me out a bit. I'm kind of postponing it till a later date because I'm kind of scared of the whole sleep paralysis thing, and that whole thing kind of freaks me out.
It's really cool though, because, you know, I know you were about to say something, sorry, but
that's fine.
It's really cool though, as far as like being creative, because it spawns a lot of film ideas and things that you know, you and I can do, and we can involve a whole bunch of people.
Well, and just remember your dreams in general, like is really helpful. Lately, I've been remembering a lot more dreams than usual. I'm like, damn, like if I had those ideas when I was awake.
I keep a dream journal. I should bring it in sometime.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We should definitely have an episode about dreams.
It's cool.
At some point. Another question I would like to kind of ask, maybe we can all answer it, is what's your earliest childhood memory?
Well, for me, it was actually learning to tie knots.
Interesting.
Which was this, it was. It was around Christmas time. I had gotten like some wooden trucks, and there were some ribbons tied to one of them, and they had kind of gotten tangled with another one, and I was pulling it along, and the ribbons kept kind of slipping off, and I'd put them back on and pull it a little bit more, and then my father told me the concept of tying a knot, you know, make a loop, put one in through, pull.
Right.
Basic granny knot, and from there I was kind of off to the races, and apparently I remember that. I don't remember tying ropes to everything in the house, but apparently I did.
That's funny.
There's photographic evidence of that.
That's really descriptive. Like, that's really cool.
So am I correct? You went to school for engineering?
Yeah, renewable energy.
Renewable energy. Do you feel like those early days of tying knots and anything, do you feel like you were inventive from a very young age, and you've had that inclination to want to create things?
For sure, yeah. I had, that was kind of my childhood ambition, to be an inventor.
Awesome.
I really liked, I don't know, it's an obscure reference, but in the Donald Duck cartoons, there's this, in the English ones, he's called Gyro Gearloose, I believe. He's this crazy inventor, and that was kind of maybe my first role model, one might say. Wow. I wanted to be like that guy.
That's awesome.
And when I heard that that would require engineering, I thought, oh God, engineering is boring. I don't actually find math and science that interesting. I just happen to be kind of good at it.
Yeah.
So I didn't pursue it for quite a while. But then during my gap years, I worked on the oil rigs for a while, and I kind of saw where we get our energy now.
Right.
And I thought, the transition from fossil fuels to sustainable energy will take quite a lot of work. And maybe I should pursue that math and science thing.
That's awesome. So like you had this kind of realization while you were on these oil rigs and stuff that you wanted to be a part of the transition.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
That's a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's so cool.
Do you remember your earliest childhood memory?
I was just about to ask you the same
I guess
question.
you would remember it if it's your earliest memory.
I had,
The timeline can get confused though.
Yeah.
But I had a lot. I've been thinking about this a lot, like trying to go back into memory and thinking about the earliest stage of my life. But what I remember actually is when I was in the hospital. I had a lot of surgeries, and I remember learning about the concept of death from my father. There was a kid that I used to hang out with a lot, and one day he wasn't there, and my dad had to explain to me kind of what it was. And it wasn't in a way of like saying, "Oh, he died, he's never here again," or anything like that. It was more so he left it up to my own interpretation what it was. He told me kind of three bases of what it could be, and he allowed me to kind of shape my own thoughts on it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And that was very interesting as a kid. He was very good at explaining things.
I really like that approach because then it allows you to kind of formulate your own opinions.
Also, and it's like, because death, I feel like for a lot of people can be negative, but it can also be a positive thing if you sway it in certain ways. There's negatives and positives to all situations, and the way that he explains things always is just, well, let's see. There's the evidence that we have in front of us of what kind of happened, of what we know, and there's different attitudes that you can apply to that. So that's what I always learn, and that's what I've kind of taken from then on from my father, is trying to be that way.
Right.
I wish I could be as good at explaining things as well as my father is. I don't think I'll ever get to that point. It's.
I'm not going to answer that one just because I don't think mine's I don't feel like sharing that. It's just not that interesting to me. But mostly because I want to get to other stuff. What do we do next? I'll ask you this. What do you think is the most significant engineering breakthrough, like ever in all of history?
Ever.
And we can brainstorm this out a bit. You don't have to know the answer right away. Like, is it the wheel, perhaps? Is it? I don't know if that. I guess that would be engineering, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's multiple different sides.
What you mean by
engineering. Exactly.
I would consider it that.
Okay.
It's. I mean, the wheel or fire are kind of the two that people go to. Like
they stand out for sure.
Yeah.
If there's any obscure ones we don't think about that often.
Well, would language count, for example?
I think it definitely, to me, I could definitely see language being a technology, and all technology would have to be engineered. So I think if you use the term loosely, it's very much so. Yeah.
I think that it's very interesting. I never thought of it in that kind of way. Like, for me, I feel the greatest in my life engineering product that came from being engineered was prosthetic to bionic arms and limbs. Like, that's just mind-boggling to me that you could just attach wires to things and it'll make it work through electrical signals and it's very fascinating. It's insane.
And I mean, right now our phones in a way are an extension of ourselves, but then as you go down the road and envision what's probably going to happen, you're going to have a lot of cyborgs. And then
like
that could be a
observer.
very good thing, because you know, maybe you have something in your body that's constantly monitoring your health to check for things and keep you up to date on your health. Maybe, you know, if you start to lose your sight, there's bionic eyes now.
Yeah.
There's lots of cool breakthroughs.
I think there was a guy that he lost his eye in an accident, and he was a filmmaker, and they put a bionic eye that was also like a camera at the same time, which was like so cool. It's like the weirdest, cool. The weirdest way of like interjecting an interest. In
the sky's the limit with those sort of things. Yeah. Like if you can imagine it and find a way to put it on your body, you could have people walking around with like dinosaur bodies at some point. I don't know.
Pretty crazy.
It's pretty,
Yeah, personally, I think one of the things that I find really fascinating is the EEG. The portable EEG.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think we really are only kind of scratching the surface of what could be done there.
Exactly. I remember when I was in class for a lab, they would put electrodes on our arm and it connected to another electrode that was like connected to this machine, and then connected to other electrodes that were on someone else's arm. And if you did this, it would send an electrical signal that would send it to this machine that would send the electrical signal to the other person's arm, and they would automatically start twitching.
Right.
Without any being able to control it. It's like
that's crazy.
It's all stuff.
Electrical stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. But EEGs are, oh my god, it's just fascinating. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I remember seeing a kind of similar thing that someone at a hackerspace in Vancouver he made this product, and I think he didn't have any more to sell at the time, but it was basically just a little bracelet that monitored your pulse and another person's pulse. And if you were close to each other, the bracelet would pulse in time with the other person's pulse.
Changing your pulse?
Well, eventually your pulses would
match it, right? Because doesn't your heart do that to music sometimes as well?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
If you walk into the room with a horse, its heartbeat will synchronize to yours apparently very, very quickly.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
Spooky. So what was it called again?
Aristotelian virtue.
Aristotelian virtue ethics.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest forms of ethics that's still kind of used today. Which, suggests it'll probably be around for quite a while still.
Right.
But that's the idea that the virtuous way of being is kind of between two extremes.
Right.
And when you're looking at really any question, you can also use that same kind of approach. The Hegelian dialectic is, I think, a similar thing, but looking at historical forces. But when you're looking at any question, I think you can take kind of the extreme on either side and use that to kind of get a better grasp on the question than if you were just starting from one extreme and trying to move closer. So when I'm mediating conflict, what I try to do is kind of take that approach that, okay, these are both intelligent people.
Exactly.
If they're wrong, it's because, or if they're both wrong, or if they can't reconcile their beliefs, they're probably looking at this same thing from opposite perspectives.
Exactly.
And if I can hold both perspectives
at once,
and kind of see what they look like as they move closer to each other, then I can help find the shared truth that they're both working towards.
Someone told me once, like, it's almost like you have a block, and on one side it's blue, the other side it's red. The person says the block's red, no, it's blue. But it's actually blue and red and a whole bunch of other colors. And if maybe it was like a bubble, like there could be literally almost infinite ways to look at the same bubble, whether you're zooming in close, far away, this side, that side, whatever angle you're looking at. And so, it's almost like you really, to have a full picture of something, you really need that 360-degree view.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, so I kind of want to share it.
Yeah.
The more dimensions something has, the harder it is to really get a grasp on it that way.
Right.
So I've been thinking about this intelligence as a great example, because intelligence has all these different dimensions, right?
Right.
So the way I think of intelligence is that it's kind of a multidimensional volume. So let's take 2 dimensions, musical ability and mathematical ability.
Right.
So how well you do on a math test predicts how well you'll do on a music test. But it doesn't predict it as well as how you'll do on another math test.
Right.
Right? So...
That's interesting.
Yeah, so if you take IQ as kind of the general, this volume with all these different dimensions, it's this really complex thing.
Yeah.
And so many people have different perspectives on what intelligence actually is. Like, I'm kind of sharing my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But so many people will have different perspectives on this, and I think you kind of almost need different views on something like that.
Exactly.
Because insofar as my perspective is useful, if something has, I mean, some people say there's 8 dimensions. I think there's probably infinite dimensions. It's just how many ways you permutate and how much can you fudge something, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think intelligence, I mean, in some ways there's absolutes around it, but in a lot of ways it's very subjective to the nature of what you're considering something worthwhile. Because if you think, you know, if your vision of society is we build the biggest, baddest things, then the people that can build the biggest, baddest things are the smartest people, right?
Yeah.
But if you live in a society where you want to have the most relaxing, the most well-being, those sorts of things, then people with higher empathy and compassion and maybe creativity are the people that might be considered intelligent in that society. And so until you consider all of the overlaps and all of the ways of being good at something, then you really miss it. And I think IQ, like, I think in some ways IQ is good because it's about pattern recognition, that sort of thing. But I think sometimes IQ really misses out on some of these other types of
I think
intelligence.
it puts a divide on everyone. I feel like, you know, like so many different types of intelligence, and I think, like, you know, every single person always tries to focus on one. We're always trying to put things in boxes. It's just naturally how we are with this society. But I think whereas you excel in one thing, you don't excel in another. You know, that's just normal with human beings. We all make mistakes. We all have skills, and we all have weaknesses. You know,
and we very rarely are average.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
Which is this weird thing that even though, say, I'm above average in mathematical and below average in musical, you know, I might look very average if you measure me on those dimensions.
Yeah.
But really very few people are average on all dimensions.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I agree with that.
And if they are, they're a jack of all trades, and that's good too.
Yeah. But
it's interesting.
Yeah, I think of the, you know, generalized intelligence as kind of our best attempt at measuring that volume.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
But trying to map it out.
Yeah.
But then
Trying to give an answer.
Yeah, you know what do you look at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
I do think being extremely good in, say, using the same examples, if you're extremely good musically, you can find a lot of patterns in math that you wouldn't if you weren't that good musically.
exactly.
You know?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think, you know, like with the way that you said that you mediate conflict, I feel very similar to that. I think you would agree in the way of trying to take 2 perspectives and try and understand them and find a solution to it. It's very, it's a good way of going.
I think that's the best way, the best starting point.
Exactly.
And then you might get there and you might find that, well, this side is actually slightly closer. And this side's like way over here. Maybe I need like a third person to really center me.
Yeah.
A third perspective or more information.
It's almost like you need 2 people per dimension of
I would
analyzing.
Yeah, and you got all these layers, and you got like 100 people in a room, and papers on the wall. It's
Little
what is-
strings connecting them.
Yeah.
what is reality? So here's another question about engineering and inventions and that kind of thing. Do you think that certain inventions, time just comes along where things line up for it to exist, and so someone thinks of it because of that? Or do you think more often than not it takes the right person to come along to really see the problem or come up with an idea in a new way, or like Einstein did, ask a question that no one was even asking.
Yeah. I think some people are definitely ahead of their time.
Right.
So I think you can have a good idea before its time comes.
Right.
Famously, Nikola Tesla predicted the smartphone in the 1800s. There's this passage that basically describes a smartphone and says, and it will be the size that it can fit in our vest pockets. And I remember thinking, the part he was most wrong about was assuming we'd still have vest pockets.
That's
right.
So
it's usually it's the cultural things that often get overlooked.
That's funny.
Like even I think the first sci-fi movie, I forget the name of it, something to do with the moon.
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress?
No, it's like the oldest sci-fi ever.
2001: A Space Odyssey?
No, like old, like the oldest ever, like 1912 or something.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's kind of cool how they do it. I mean, none of it's actually accurate. Like they get shot out of a cannon in this little bullet to the moon.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But their costuming is very much of the time. Like they didn't think ahead to give them weird suits or anything, which I think is interesting. I think. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but as far as the invention coming at the right time or not, I think it's a bit of both. I think some things are like, if everyone missed it ahead of time, then eventually someone would be like, why didn't we think of this? You can just combine this and this thing and put this on top and then voila, fireworks.
I always catch myself thinking about, I know this is kind of the same, but also a little bit weaning off what you were saying. I find myself also always thinking, what are we, we always look at older generations and what they did wrong, with racism and all these different things that went on. And I often catch myself wondering, what will future generations say that we did wrong?
It's probably a lot of the same things.
Yeah, true.
Racism,
because
all these things.
We're also
in slightly different forms than they might have been 100 years ago.
It's just always interesting to me.
But definitely also new things.
Yeah,
too.
and I also think of, our technology that we have now. How is that going to be changed in the future? Like, what is, this is going to be a fossil to
the contact lenses or the chip in your head or whatever it ends up being for. I mean, there'd probably be. I would say technology ends up producing more options rather than less. I think people have all sorts of different ways of connecting to the internet.
Yeah, that's the definition of technology.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
because my dad lived in a time where there wasn't even TV. They didn't have a TV in their house. That to me is mind-boggling because now it's just there's screens everywhere. There's just you record your life essentially now.
Yeah, I mean, presuming everything goes well, I think really there's infinite possibilities. I think technology is something that accumulates that doesn't diminish, right? So the more inventions you have...
Well, it has.
Well, I guess my point more so is the more inventions you have, the more inventions are possible because you can combine those inventions in new ways. And so it has this sort of... I'm sure there's lulls and things like in stagnations, but in terms of the bigger picture, I think the more you combine things together, the more then possibilities arise.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we're kind of still getting wrong, even though we know that we shouldn't, we know better, but we don't really know how to do the better thing.
Right.
Is we still don't think of organizations as networks. We still, in a lot of instances, think of organizations as pyramids. This kind of central control thing where one person kind of has all the information and that radiates outward to everyone else.
Kind of like cryptocurrency versus regular currency, where one's decentralized and then one is controlled by banks. And
exactly. Okay. And I think, most organizations would probably benefit from recognizing that they are actually networks.
Right.
The network is just a better model for how people organize.
Right.
The whole concept of a middleman, for example, that's like a human acting as a network, as a connector between two nodes.
Right.
That introduces friction to the system.
Yeah.
Right? That's not an efficient way of organizing things when you can just, when those two people on the other sides of that middleman can just connect to each other directly.
Yeah, and you know, always giving more people to communicate with is not really the most efficient way to do it. Always giving, like, of course, keeping communication broad is nice,
right.
But having a direct communication, that's
and
always.
Even using the government as an example, where, you know, my mom used to work in the government. It's like they have the system it's a hierarchy, and so like it's very much, if you want something done, you need permission from all these people. That goes up, and then it comes back down, and there's just all these middlemen, and it's just a very inefficient system because there's all this red tape, and then you spend like almost the majority of your time, it would seem like, dealing with that communication instead of actually being effective at what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and you know, another example also of that is like getting copyright for music. You know, sometimes you have to go through different agencies and, you know, record labels to be able to get to that one person to say you can use.
That's
this
why
music.
artists should be independent.
Yeah, but you were about to go into something as well.
Yeah. I was going to say in design terms, we would say that adds a dampening effect to the system. So that can be a good thing, which is probably why it's stayed around since, you know, ancient Egypt. If you don't overreact to stimulus, which, you know, that's one thing that one wants to avoid, both in one's personal life and especially in organizations. You don't want an organization overreacting to anything new. But I think there are better ways to introduce a dampening agent than an ever-expanding bureaucracy. Now, that said, I don't know what that would look like.
Right.
Maybe that's something we could brainstorm, actually, because that's something that, I mean, even if we look at the brain as a network, it's possible, and actually the people who are best at kind of predicting based on the information they have don't change their minds too quickly. They take in new information and they make small changes. Yeah,
small adjustments.
Yeah. And so I wonder, if you have a system that isn't hierarchical, where everyone has direct access to the person they need to have access to.
Right.
How do you introduce that dampening to prevent this kind of... I mean, that's the CEO has too many emails problem, isn't it?
Like a lot of high-level traffic and buildup of information. That could be something that's very difficult to deal with. I think tough part of that is being able to, almost to me, like the way that I see, the first thing that I think of is almost creating an AI in a way that could help mediate that. But that's also another communicator. That's also something that
can be corruptible. But in general,
but
I think
the way
that's
that
a
I
good approach.
think about it is because if you have an AI, that works. Let's say in a perfect world that it works, it's something that there's no human error specifically that comes through it. So there would still be him. He would still be able to attain all of this information, but it would just be in a better fashion through this organizing, wheel of AI.
There might be, I know Ray Dalio has tried to solve this problem. He's a hedge fund manager.
Okay.
And he wants to get the good ideas to be adopted in his organization because the good ideas make more money. And this kind of AI is one thing that his company is working on. And I think, if I think how I would design something like that, and this is an idea I've had for a different context already, you would want some kind of reputation management system where the ability to receive information is free, but to send information to someone else is kind of costly. And if you send information to someone and they're glad that you sent it, then obviously you can send it more cheaply the next time. But ultimately you kind of have to...
So you're talking like in terms of like emails?
Almost like, imagine imagine a cryptocurrency email network where it costs tokens to
have access to certain other people.
Yeah, and the more someone, basically approves of your email, the lower the cost becomes to send to that
And so
person.
then, that decentralizes anyone really from spamming off the
Okay.
bat.
It's a
And
really
it also
cool
provides
idea.
opportunities that people that are really giving a lot to this community and this network
Mhm.
also receive that much, if not more, back, because then they're having access to more people within the network.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's very interesting. I like
That's
that.
a really cool idea. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like something Ethereum could even be involved with, because I
Yeah.
know
Oh, yeah.
that has to do with like
You could certainly build that on the Ethereum network
Yeah.
if you were a Solidity ninja.
Yeah.
Get on that Solidity ninja.
someone out there.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn that, but it's a tough.
So it's
a tough program.
6:56 now.
Yeah, so maybe
Okay.
we'll explore like 1 to 2 more questions
Yeah.
and then do a quick
Okay.
intro.
Yep.
I'll ask one, and then maybe you ask one, and then if you have any final queries. I'm going to go with who's someone who had a large impact in your life, whether it's early on or more recently, that's really kind of either shaped how you see the world or just had a lasting impact in what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, the first person I thought of when you mentioned that was my high school drama teacher, Robert Lutz, who he was definitely a polymath. He was this accomplished musician, taught history and law,
Oh, wow.
and also ran the drama program at my school. And it's hard to describe, one takeaway lesson from that. But just something about the way he lived his life with this constant curiosity and, was being always enthusiastic about the things he engaged with and willing to improvise. That I found really admirable and kind of, I learned a bit myself. I mean, he ran an improv workshop after school. So obviously I learned to improvise a lot better from him.
Yeah.
But he was also kind of a role model in just how to be enthusiastic in approaching things.
That's really good to grow up with. It's a lot of people have trouble going through life and finding enthusiasm in the things that they even enjoy, right? So
I think
really good.
improvisation to me, like I did a bit of that in school as well. Probably the most useful skill I think in life.
I didn't have enough of that going through school. I feel like
all improvisation is being able to adapt on the spot.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So that provides a lot of interesting opportunities and allows you to deal with situations as they arise in life with less kind of fear, I think.
And less hesitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have final?
If you could, this is by the wayside, but if you could create a planet, what would there be on it? What would be your perfect
What would be the atmosphere?
Planet.
Yeah.
Wow.
In your mind?
Wow.
Not necessarily to live on.
Yeah, but even just the way that you
customize it.
Yeah, just
aesthetically or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it would probably be.
Habitable. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
It would be. It would be like a rainforest
Okay.
type of planet. Probably like. Have you ever seen those?
Avatar? No.
Avatar.
Okay,
Yeah,
continue your
I'm not
thought.
really inspired by Avatar, but I was going to say actually, have you ever seen those regions where like there's been a lot of meteor impacts, and there's like all these lakes interspersed with really lush greenery?
yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
I
Actually,
I haven't, but I want to check that out.
That's It's
So it's a
very
thing?
it's
It's
very vibrant. Yeah.
I don't know if it's meteor impacts that cause that.
yeah,
It looks
but-
like it.
But it's I know what you're talking. I've seen pictures
Interesting.
of stuff like that, and because I play video games a lot too. Like concepts and stuff like that come from like the worlds that they create come from very beautiful, vibrant areas like that. But that's really cool.
So it would be like a kind of consistently jungle type planet.
Well, I
Super
imagine
Earth.
like. Yeah. I imagine it would be. I imagine it would be very warm to fairly cool, depending on where you were on the planet.
Right.
So it would have, near the poles, it would be quite cold,
Right.
but still very alive.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's Cool.
Do you have any final queries for us, or just things any curiosities that are on the tip of your mind?
Well, there was actually something I kind of wanted to bring up,
Okay.
which is, I alluded to it with this, the more intelligent someone is, the more obviously wrong a belief they can rationalize.
Right.
Have you ever heard of the Flynn effect?
No.
No, I have not.
So, yeah, I'm thinking about intelligence recently, clearly, but so since the IQ test was designed in like the early 1900s, it's been applied a lot. And the average has always been 100 because it's balanced so that 100 is always the average.
Like
And
they
Right.
adjust.
yeah, the percentiles are kind of above or below.
Yeah.
But what they found pretty quickly was that every generation, they have to make the tests harder for the average to be 100.
Right. I've heard that.
So basically...
So that's the Flynn effect? Is that-
Yeah, that's
okay.
called the Flynn effect.
Okay.
So basically every generation kind of does better on IQ tests than the one before it. And
Until now.
Yeah.
yeah, but if you look at that trend and then you think about the fact that being intelligent actually makes you more able to ignore common sense.
I can see that.
That makes
very
a lot of
well.
sense
Yeah,
to
that's-
me.
Yeah.
Or does it? I
With-
don't know. If it makes sense,
But
then
it's-
maybe I'm not intelligent.
It's
No.
also- It's one of those
Yeah.
things that I think of a lot too, as a person that has been diagnosed with a learning disability at a young age. And having to go through school and having a different learning style. Like everyone has a different learning style.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But it's something I've had to put a lot of thought into.
I feel like, if you like, even just having a really abstract imagination, like for fun, I can convince myself of anything. Like I can think of the parameters where that really small, if not at all, possibility could exist.
Yeah.
I think the trouble is, and then if someone's really particularly intelligent, maybe they would convince themselves so much so that they wouldn't be able to backtrack.
Yeah.
Or even just being able to think of something as simple as, using something that you hold materials in as a cup to drink water out of. This is used as, a cap you hold things in to preserve them, but people use them as cups as well. So it's intelligence is kind of it's a broad topic.
It's a hard concept to grab a hold of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything that complex, of course.
It's
There'll
hard
be
to-
so many theories about it.
Yeah, it's hard to wager what it actually.
It's interesting because you're trying to analyze yourself, or at least your peers, in a way, and it's like it's the same thing with consciousness. It's like, how do you really define something that you are completely caged by? Like you're constrained by it, and how do you see outside of that bubble?
Yeah.
That in terms of consciousness, but I think it can be somewhat applied to intelligence as well. How can you see intelligence and what that means, your analytical skills, from an outside perspective when you're stuck within your own intelligence and perspective?
I think statistics help there.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps.
We have
Probabilities.
we have this very logic-based kind of heritage, I guess, from the ancient Greeks and then the Newtonians, that we kind of think of ourselves as needing this theoretical framework, but really we can make a lot of observations and look at patterns and trends before we kind of try to formalize our understanding and kind of boil down into a theory. I think it's often useful to just kind of look at the raw data, and computers, of course, make that a lot easier than it has been in the past.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's an AI that like rediscovered, but by itself, without any external input, like different physics theories or something.
Yeah.
Could be wrong on that, but I read a lot of articles, but I'm pretty sure that was one of them.
If you can put that link in the description.
Yeah, I can find that. So I guess I lied. There's actually one more question I forgot. We always ask at the end, except we're going to rephrase it this time. What's a lesson you learned in life that you wish everyone knew, or that you knew earlier? Like something from a struggle or a strife of some sort? Or...
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
It is. I kind of have an answer in mind. I'm just having trouble formulating it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Quite
Take your
right.
time.
It's actually, I did learn it fairly early, but it's one of those things that it's almost a platitude when you say it.
Okay.
But the idea that being liked by others is kind of harmed by caring about the opinions of others.
Right. Yeah.
That's something that I think a lot of people struggle with that and have heard the platitude.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And so is there like a backstory there in which you kind of...
You know, it was a fiction book I read, it's like in grade 6 or something,
Okay.
where there was just a character that had figured that out and, was well liked because she wouldn't compromise herself.
Right.
For what she thought other people would like. And she was kind of the popular person that the hero of the story looked up to. And it was a lot about, that awkward phase of your early teens where you're trying to fit in, but you're also trying to build an identity.
Right.
Yeah.
And, to a great degree, we still do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's most intense then.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like I said, it's very much it's a platitude to say that if you want to be popular, just stop caring about being popular.
Yeah, of course, but I think it still works though. Like that's a really good advice to give. Is you shouldn't ever have to care about what other people.
I think it's one of those things that's very true when you're thinking of it, but it's also one of the easier things to forget.
Of course,
because it's so natural to worry and be, insecurity is something I think we almost like. It's a feeling of safety to be like, oh, I wonder what this person thinks, or why did I say that stupid thing, and then you get caught up in that. But as soon as you get out of that, it's like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're constantly worrying what other people think, they're more likely to think bad things.
One of the most important things that I learned from the course that I was taking was a lot of distractions in my life, in others' lives as well, come from going out to parties and all that stuff, or doing things. And oftentimes our first inkling is to say, I'm sorry, I can't make it out. Mm-hmm. And instead of that, I'm trying more now to say thank you for inviting me, instead of like listening to having someone listen to me rant about something. I oftentimes shoot after it and say, oh, I'm sorry that I went on this rant, I'm sorry that I talked for so long,
I'm sorry for saying sorry.
Yeah exactly. And it comes into this, like you said, this self-fulfilling prophecy. But though now I'm going more towards thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. It's showing appreciation, because no one wants to hear after like listening to an hour of someone talking, saying like, he thinks that I don't want to be here. And no one wants that.
And it's out of you feeling guilty, but then the other person could potentially, and they probably don't, but they could potentially see it as like, he thinks he's wasting my time or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and
I see what you're saying.
That can be
showing appreciation.
Yeah, and that could be very, like I had a friend that felt that was very, mean to say, because it's like, who are you to tell me that I don't want to be here, And this course really only kind of made it better for me to really learn that. It's interesting. Yeah, anyway, that's
cool. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on BrainShake.
Yes.
I feel like we just got warmed up. Like,
we got to do this again.
Yeah,
I would love to, because you're so interesting to talk to. I feel like
we only just broke the first layer, not even like
we just put a crack in the ice of the iceberg, and there's just so much more we could talk about.
Yeah,
there always is. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There always is.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching.
Thank you.
We came back to our regular boardroom style.
Yeah. Back at Volta.
Thanks, Volta.
Thanks, Volta Labs.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you and everything you do for the community. I think it's a great hub for creators and tech people and all that stuff.
Thank you so much for coming on. Honestly,
it's
just so great chatting with you.
It's fun.
Awesome.
All right, see y'all next time on
BrainShake.
Yeah. Sweet.
And today we're going to give each other our phones and text each other's friends.
Yep, for about 10 minutes.
Did you pocket dial me?